This is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we're talking about Miss Marvel Episode 5, Time and Again.
You know, I'm pretty sure a Pakistani goodbye is the opposite of an Irish one. Overstay your welcome and then ask if you could take home food.
Welcome back, fellow Defenders. Yes, this is the Defenders podcast on TV Podcast Industries. This time we are talking about Miss Marvel, the penultimate episode, episode 5, Time and Again. I'm one of your hosts, Chris.
I'm one of your hosts, Derek.
Hello there, fellow Defenders. I am one of your other hosts, John.
Yes, we are here, and do not worry, we will not be doing an Irish goodbye as we have just done the intro. No. We are going to stay and talk and discuss this penultimate episode, because that is it. We have 40 to 45 minutes potentially left of Miss Marvel Season 1, or limited season. We don't know if we're getting Season 2, so until we see her in the Marvels, the second Captain Marvel film, this could be pretty much the last few moments we have with Kamala Khan.
It is, but it's really exciting. At least we know where she's going next, right?
Exactly.
That's kind of cool. At least there is something there. If there hadn't been, and we were wondering whether there was a second season or whether we would see the character again, like Moon Knight, for example, we have no idea whenever that's coming back. But at least we know this leads into the Marvels in the future, so we will see Kamala Khan back. And there's also a Disney cruise that's on at the moment, and the guests of the cruise were treated to a little preview of what Miss Marvel's final suit looks like. Because Iman Vellani does star in a clip on board the ship alongside the actors from Ant-Man and the Wasp, alongside Sam Wilson as well. And there's also a special appearance by Captain Marvel. The two characters don't meet, of course, because they will meet in the Marvels. But really exciting. Check it out. There's the videos out there. Loads of people on board took video footage of it. Check it out if you don't mind being spoiled about what her final look looks like. But it's really good.
I'm looking forward to it. We've seen the back of it on posters and kind of for marketing for the show, but I've yet to see the full front in all its glory, so I am looking forward to that. Yeah. But we're not here to talk about the fashion of Miss Marvel's outfit. No. We're here to talk about episode 5, Time and Again. So, gentlemen, I want to jump straight in because I think we're going to have some differing thoughts, differing opinions, but I really want to get into the nitty gritty of it. So, before we get into what happened, Derek, do you want to tell us who gave us what?
Yes, executive producers for the show, as always, Kevin Feige, Louis D'Esposito, Victoria Alonso, Bisha K. and Arbi and Fallah. The head writer for the show is Bisha K. This episode was directed by Sharmeen Obaid-Chinoy, who directed episode 4 as well, as you remember. And we talked about that. I talked about her directing style, also a Pakistani American who has directed loads of movies in the past. So the right person to be on board to do this Pakistani India set episode of the show. This episode was written by Fatimah Asghar. This is her first episode of Marvel TV, but she was nominated for an Emmy for a show she wrote called Brown Girls in the past. So an Emmy award winning writer on board for Miss Marvel.
Excellent.
Lots of award-winning people involved in this series. Have you noticed that?
Yeah. And you can see why. I'm not kind of blowing smoke. Like, this from even a cinematography point of view, but also some of the pieces that were discussed, you can definitely see why there was some kind of... Yeah, you can just see it. It kind of does come out in it.
Yeah. I think it's giving creative people the ability to tell stories in this universe with the connections to the MCU. I think it's a really good choice that they've made with all the TV shows and movies that have been done under Kevin Feige recently.
Absolutely. I think it feels like Marvel TV on Disney Plus is continuing that tradition that was mentioned in the Marvel 616 documentary series that we covered, which was talking about where, writers coming on board, and in particular with the creator of Miss Marvel, but writers coming on board that are, I think the way they described it is they were mirroring themselves and their life, their experience in their writing. They weren't being told to simply project, a white girl or a white man or whatever onto the characters. And so, like, with the creative team directing, writing, showrunners here, like with Moon Knight, it is that kind of ethos to me, and I think it's really, really cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because everyone said they've loved spending time with the Khan family, and that is surely down to the experiences, the life that the showrunners, the writers have had in doing this.
Absolutely, and even down to Amanda Lanning herself. It's she says this is so close to her own life and the experience she's literally just had as she's finished high school. So it's really interesting that they're pouring all of that into the show, and I think that's one of the things that's been most successful about this series is that exploration of this particular family. So been really important, and that's a lot of what this episode is about, John. So do you want to give us your synopsis for Miss Marvel episode 5, Time and Again?
Sure. In India in 1942, Kamala Khan's great-grandmother Aisha is hiding from her clandestine companions. She catches the attention of Muslim activist Hasan. He is trying to rally Sikhs, Muslims and Hindu to unite against the British, but to little effect. Partition is coming and Muslims are moving to the new state of Pakistan. Hasan offers Aisha a place to stay and eat, and the couple fall in love and have a baby, Kamala's grandmother, Sana. As India gets more unsafe, Aisha is confronted by her former companion, Najma, who has spent years searching for Aisha and wants her to finally come good on her promise and open a portal from this world back to their realm. Aisha placates her, saying she needs more time to retrieve the second bangle. In the intervening 24 hours, she convinces Hasan to go with her and their daughter to the last trains out of India to Pakistan. But Najma tracks her there, and realizing that Aisha no longer wants to leave the Earth realm, Najma stabs her and leaves her for dead. With the original owner of the bangle that enhances her powers now dead, Kamala steps in and completes their family's ancient tale by guiding her grandmother back to her father with a burst of stars. With the circle complete, Kamala returns to the present, but must still face the remaining clandestine. A gateway to their realm has been opened by Kamala's adventure, but it's not what they expected, and it kills one of the final clandestine when she tries to pass through. With a word about familial responsibilities from Kamala, Najma is encouraged to sacrifice herself and closes the realm gate by sending its power into her disowned son, Cameron, as he has the power of the Noor as well. As Najma dies, Maniba sees her daughter's power and realizes all of her mother's fantastical tales were true. Back in New Jersey, Cameron is shocked to discover he has a similar command of his powers as Kamala. He seeks out the help of the only other person who knows Kamala's secret, Bruno. After an awkward start, Bruno agrees to help him, but they discover they are being watched as a damage control drone launches an explosive attack on Bruno's home.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, fellow defenders. We are at the end of the penultimate episode there. And it goes through a lot. It gives us a lot of historical context. It does give us a bit of a grandfather paradox, which we are dealing with as well in a different show.
But we can't talk about that show because we haven't released any podcast out of that show at all yet. So we can't talk about that one. It's coming soon.
Yes, but watch this space. But we have that, and then we end up going straight into an explosive ending, if you will. So let's jump straight into it to discuss pretty much probably the first marvelous moment, the first marvelous point in this, which is the full history of Aisha and how, to a degree, basically we saw her in episode 3 back in the 10 Rings kind of temple where there was what we assume to be a dead Kree, a kind of blue-skinned alien of some kind, a hand with the bangles. And we essentially now kind of pick up at the beginning of this episode with her running from the British officers who are screaming to stop her, the last person who would know where she is, as she has run off. So what did you guys think of this kind of, this historical, the flashback episode? Pretty much, we talk about this it comes up in a lot of our shows that we cover, and this is just a different variation where it's not just the original character's flashback, it's the character's family's flashback to a degree.
And that was kind of what surprised me, because we left on a bit of a cliffhanger last week with Kamala going back in time and being in 1947 at that moment when people are leaving India to go to Pakistan, standing on top of the train. And I thought we were going to pick up at that moment and there was going to be a big story of her adventure and how she gets back. But that doesn't really take place until about 5 minutes towards the end of the show. This is absolutely the story of Aisha, how she found love, how they started a family, how the history of the jinn within Kamala Khan's family began effectively. Yeah. So, and I thought it was really interesting. I thought I liked the story. It's a very different story for Marvel. We certainly don't see very many romantic tales within the MCU.
Yeah. I thought it was really interesting, the whole historical context. I mean, I love history and, just having the old newsreel footage, the Pathé. Yeah. Thought that was really good. But I do think, for me, I would have liked it if that had then come to Kamala on top of the train. And even if she'd just been able to spot Aisha, after having been stabbed, at the point of passing away and going to her, and then it cuts to her fleeing the British officer, and you get her backstory, after some of those words to Kamala. Yeah. I would have kind of quite liked that, because you're right. Like, for me, thought we were going to go straight into it, and it kind of, because it's such an evolving thing that happens between Aisha and Hasan and why she's doing it, I think I would have, I just thought that may have worked better, but I really liked it. I loved,
I would probably say that they had both versions of that edit available to them. Seeing the edit of the show with that Kamala scene bookending the show, where she sees Aisha, goes down to her, and then the story starts in Aisha. And I think they just wanted to jump straight into Aisha's story and tell it straight through. I just don't know what both cuts would look like, but I guess that was a decision that they made, because it's a very easy change to make, to swap that scene around.
Absolutely. But I mean, it was great having Aisha's tale here, because, the mystery is that she just disappeared. We were thinking, did she manage to make it through the Noor without her companions? Was there some kind of rift here? And actually, there was, but she was fleeing the attacks from the Brits in the temple, but ultimately goes into hiding from the ClanDestine, because she's hiding and fleeing from her companions as well, I think, in a sense here. And I really kind of liked how that all developed, where Hasan, you see his role trying to bring everyone together, talking about the divide and conquer of the British rule. Yeah. There's certainly nothing more potent in dividing than creating new states in both. I think at the time it was East and West Pakistan, which East Pakistan became Bangladesh ultimately. Right. So, like, I thought it was really, really nicely intertwined, and I loved Hasan and Aisha's relationship. Just him, sort of offering, and then her coming to the door, and just that relationship building from very quiet beginnings. Like, I love it when he says, "Oh, you do speak." It was just really good. I did like it.
The one thing I'm a little unclear on still by the end of the episode. I understand the story of how they fell in love, and I think it's really well told and everything. But the one thing I'm still not clear on, we've seen the previous flashback where Aisha's the last person to come in. We know who she is because we've heard about her. She comes in, takes the bangle, and leaves. And I don't know why she separated herself from the rest of the group. There's no particular indication in the discussions that they've had that she has a feeling of something sinister happening when they go back over through the Noor. Why she's staying in the Earth realm. I understand why she stayed there after she met Hasan and had her daughter. I totally get that, but I don't know why goes on the run. And I think you probably could have had some point of discussion on that.
So I know exactly what you mean. It's all from Aisha's perspective because we only see Najma come in when she's found her. She's finally tracked her down.
And what do we say? That's roughly 4 years, isn't it?
Is looking from underneath the tree in Hasan's rose field. And I know what you mean. I think that was a big question. Now, we did go back and look at that episode where she gets the bangle in the temple. And Najma is the one that kind of splits them up where, because the temple is being shelled by the British. There's gunfire. And Najma says, I'll go back to the other clandestine to help them out because it seems like they're fighting the British troops. And she does tell Aisha to go the other way and, you get out of here because she's got the bangle. But also Aisha does put the bangle on and it activates and we see the purple glow in her eyes. And I just wonder, I mean, we don't know, but whether something that's, spoke to her or the feeling meant that she knew doing the rift was a bad idea or something like that. Yeah. But you're right. There's a little bit of, dare I say it, Terrigen mist about this that you can't quite understand why she went from being seemingly quite with that group, part of the team, to suddenly fleeing. Because, I mean, the initial scene is her fleeing from the British as well, not the clandestine. Yeah. And then she makes her way to the village. Yeah. And then she stays there. Now, it seems over time, absolutely. Yeah. But
I feel like we're giving the show an explanation that it didn't put on screen.
Exactly.
It didn't give us an option because the only way I could read it was she ran away exactly as she was told by Najma. Najma said, "I'll catch up with you later." And during that time that she ran away, she stops and stays with Hasan.
And falls in love.
And it takes them years to find her.
Yeah.
And that's it. Like, that's the only reason that she now suddenly has the connection with the Earth Realm. She wasn't trying to separate herself from them. That's the only thing I can piece together in my head. And I thought it would be more than that. I just thought there would be an actual rift between them. That something had happened in the past that had separated them out. No, again, that's afterwards. But I thought there might be a rift before she met Hasan. That would mean that she isn't connected to these clandestines.
It almost seemed slightly odd that before they did fall in love, before having Sana, Kamala's grandmother, that she didn't say, like, literally the next day after he gave her food, right, I have to go now. I have to leave now to go back and find them. So, it's a little unclear.
It's like, you keep running west and we'll find you. Oh, wow, she's gone really far west and now we can't find her. That's what the story seems to be. But I don't know. What do you think, Chris?
I think they're leaning on what we as an audience know, that there is the badness of the veil and thing. Like, we know that if you use the bangle, it will potentially destroy the Earth. But that conversation never happened. And that's the problem. One of the problems I have, which is, there's just a couple of intellectual writing narrative leaps that they make, potentially shorthand, potentially for time. I can't live on the time argument because this is a short episode. It's a shorter episode, I should say. It's not 20 minutes, but and again, it's a Disney Plus show. This could have been an hour if they wanted. If they wanted a scene where they show Aisha essentially, like, just before finding the bangle going, I don't know if we can do this. Yeah. Like, this will destroy the Earth. Or, like, them having a discussion going, look, when we do this, this will destroy Earth, but who cares? Yeah. And then Aisha having the daughter, falling in love, and then that changing her mood over time. Yeah. Or, and again, I'm making the narrative leap here, like, her having a conversation with her husband and him going, well, you can't do that. You can't leave me and you can't destroy the Earth because that's going to destroy your daughter. Like, but she doesn't even tell him.
Exactly.
Until the train to Karachi. Yeah. So it was all these little bits. I was like, this is cool. But you're just adding in, you're expecting us to make narrative connections that you don't like there's 3 different routes that could end up at the same, but you're giving us that kind of choose your own adventure. It's all going to be slightly different for each of you.
Absolutely. And I will, of course, let's say it. This is the penultimate episode. There's still one more episode. It's entirely possible every single episode has dealt with something from the past of this family. It's entirely possible that we will get that story in the next episode. There will be a scene which will include all the characters that are gone now at the end of this episode, and they will have that conversation and they will clear it up completely. So that's still entirely possible.
Of course. Sorry,
It just felt exactly as you say. She says to Hasan the last night when they're going to the train station, she tells him, I have got some magic basically involved in me. You always knew I did, but I actually do have some real magic.
Yeah.
And he goes, why didn't you tell me all along? And she says to him, you knew I was in trouble when I met you. Basically, you knew that I was being chased effectively from the start. And you never asked that question of me for the entire 4 years. So fine. Was she being chased? What was she being chased by? Is she talking about the British chasing her? Is there a disconnection between herself and the Jinn?
Yeah.
I would hope they will take 5 minutes out next week in the final episode and just put a button on that topic.
Yeah, because I really like that conversation from Aisha with Hasan because, Hasan, like you say, knew she was running from something. At least to begin with, you have to assume it's the British because that's what they show. He is certainly against what the British are doing here. So, sees this as helping an ally, initially and giving her food. But he does spot, Najma under the tree. He knows about the woman that was watching it and who she went out to speak to, in that moment. And I quite like, her telling him about the magic, but saying, I didn't care to say this, and you didn't push me. So if you'd pushed or asked the question, she probably would have said it, but it just didn't come up in conversation because ultimately she was happy. Yeah, and I think that's it. She got happy, loving and comfortable with Hasan. They had a child. And so all of a sudden, that was her world, not to go in that house, not her world through the Noor and into that realm. So, like you say, it could just be as simple as that she found love. And while I loved this window into Aisha and seeing what becomes of her, because that is crucial, you need that. It just seemed, I think it was just quick because they had to get back to Kamala and that the explanation of the Khan family story of the stars. And there was also then, which I wasn't expecting, her return and what happens at the Vale.
Yeah. And I think the final nail for me, the nail that got this was, at no point did Aisha explain that she was a Jinn. The term Jinn never came up. There are other magic mythology users in this culture. So Jinn was never talked on. That's the missing bit because her grandmother goes, you're a Jinn. Yes, I know you're a Jinn. It's fine. You're half Jinn. It's like to Kamala. But that was never explained. So how the grandmother and the great-grandfather knew there was a history of Jinn in there. Right. Is just it's a missing point. And again, next episode, potentially. But I don't think so.
Weirdly, that's actually, I think, a callback to earlier on in the season. Do you remember when we met the Red Daggers? Kamala was specifically told if any magic user landed in the Himalayas, they'll be called Jinn. That's just a standard term that will be used. So I think Sana's father would have taken that term saying your mother was magic, a Jinn, like you, kind of thing. I think that's probably where it would come from. That
answers that. Perfect. Thank you.
You know what I mean? But one other thing I do want to say about this segment with Aisha, I do love that it's telling a story that a lot of people maybe don't know. I certainly didn't know a lot of the detail of what was going on in the separation of Pakistan and creation of Pakistan in India. I love how the story is told through the eyes of Hasan because he's telling you these really detailed things about what's happening to a lot of Muslims in this country at the time. He's saying, the house was built by his father. This is his family home that he's lived in his entire life. And all across the countryside, people are being burned out of their homes because of this push to get them on religious lines being pushed into another country. That's something that doesn't really happen in a lot of countries, creating borders and sending people of a different religion across those borders out of their homes. The elements that are pulled into it, like the local people in the local village, who you see give a lot of respect to Hasan when he's giving his speech in town, when the first time that Aisha meets him, they're giving a lot of respect. By the time she's had Sana as a child, they're no longer even selling her milk because she's considered a Muslim living in his house with her. She's no longer being dealt with, and he's no longer being dealt with by the people in the community. Yeah. Some people are reaching out to him, but I really liked how they layered that in, a nice, an interesting history lesson of what happened.
It really is. And it's great to have, because, that context is just, like you say, it just adds new dimensions. It's why they ultimately, he's a farmer. He's growing roses. He has the milk, all this kind of stuff. Ultimately why he abandons, or is effectively pushed into abandoning, his home because of violence. And it's a really important thing, to understand, in the sense that most refugees don't want to be refugees. Absolutely. They want their home back. Yep. They want, if they are pushed, they look for a place of safety. And in this case, it was a newly formed, I think they call it the Dominion of Pakistan, it to effectively be, the part of India where only Muslims would be, but under a new name.
Can you imagine, get out of a house that you own, that your family built, get out of that house, and you'll feel safe in the new place we've created for you that you've never been to before.
Yep.
And we're not even going to help you. Everybody has to go and get a train from the same train station at the same time and get there. There's no passage out of India. This is everybody rushing to get out before they're trapped in a place that's now become really scary for them.
And it builds on Sana's chat with Kamala, saying, my roots are in India.
But I have a Pakistani passport.
But I have a passport that says Pakistan.
Yeah, exactly. I think that's one of the things that really should be taken out of these Marvel shows. Every show has had its own change and twist, and they haven't really taken that route that people would have expected from Marvel TV. I think every show has been really different overall. And they're taking these chances because they're trying to do something different with these shows. In here, we're learning the history of a Muslim family from Pakistan, and all of the history in the land that's going on there. But similarly, Moon Knight had a really interesting story to tell. Hawkeye had an interesting story to tell. All of them really different. And what Marvel seems to be really avoiding with their TV shows is just literally having, here's the big bad, punch them in the face for 2 or 3 episodes. You fail, and then you have a big battle at the end. Because that's what their movies were to begin with when they were setting up the universe. And by the end of them, they're all trying to do something different. This phase 4 of Marvel, to me, has been really interesting because they're trying different ways of telling stories for these characters, all character led. I think that's been fascinating for me.
Yeah, look at Eternals. Eternals was an actual, one of the first introductions of a film at a film level going, we're going to give you an historical epic to a degree. And now it had a love story, and then it also had the big bad at the end, but it was still different. And
Absolutely.
This is do you know how I knew this was even going to be a different show? It was like when we get to the penultimate episodes and the opening goes into sepia tone. They change the style of the Miss Marvel, and the Marvel symbol comes into Urdu, and then it gives you a newsreel from the time. Now, I don't know if that's a real newsreel or if they made it just to kind of out of pieces of others, but it looked like I'm learning about the history of Pakistan and Karachi and the exodus. Yeah, but I'm assuming it is as historically correct as I'm going to be able to, without kind of opening a history book, I'm ever going to learn. But you're connecting and learning.
Open a history book, Chris.
Yes, I really should. But in the interim, I will also, in the next 7 days, watch the end of this show, because it is giving me that historical context that I've never had before, with a sprinkling of superheroics on top.
I told you guys before, man. Definitely, the three of us get together and we write the new origin story of Banshee from Ireland, and we will be right in there in Marvel HQ getting rights to a 6-episode Banshee story.
That'd be awesome.
Telling you. But this whole period of Aisha in India does end where we thought it was going to end, with Kamala coming in, taking over, and filling in what she thought was Aisha guiding her grandmother to her great grandfather. There you go. I was trying to get all the family members right there. She uses her power, and the discs that we've seen her create, which is what Sana's climbing on to go across to her father, break into these stars, which lead Sana to her father. Did Sana do that?
Yes.
Did Sana break them into the stars? Because it's not something that Kamala seemed to have control over. In fact, Kamala says, I can't create stars, I can only create circles.
Yeah, exactly.
So it looks like Sana did use her power there. It's quite cool.
Yeah, it looked like, because at a point Sana as a child has her hand kind of outstretched in front of her, like almost like she's trying to grab the stars, but she's walking towards them. So basically, she essentially broke Kamala's circles into smaller stars that then start to drift away.
Yeah, and it's to the whole thing that Aisha says to Kamala, what you seek is seeking you. It's all that thematically through that. Kamala is seeking answers. Kamala is wanting to know about her great grandmother, Aisha. She finds her, but Aisha is also needs her to be there in order to help her daughter.
Yeah.
And similarly then with Sana, with young 7-year-old Sana, she's looking for her father. And she is seeking him, he is seeking her, and uses the power to do the seeking effectively.
Yeah, exactly.
So I have no idea about these power sets anymore. How their powers and what is their magic and everything. Because it seemed like Aisha pulled Kamala with her powers out of the future into the past, which just coincided with the bangle getting hit. But Aisha doesn't have the bangle on. So the level of power she has without the bangle is there. We also see that later with some of the other clandestine who don't have the bangle but have powers.
Yes,
like
absolutely.
Quite significant powers.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't fully understand this right now.
Yeah.
Because I'm I thought the whole point was they were kind of just super strong, kind of a bit more kind of invulnerable to a degree, ancient, like immortal, quote unquote.
Yeah.
Because they've been around for at least since the 40s, probably longer.
Oh, significantly longer. They've been here for at least a century is what they've said. But it does go back to exactly what we said in the first episode when Kamala found the bangle. It activated her Nur power and she can focus the Nur power using the bangle. If that bangle's gone, that probably changes maybe the way she uses her power, but she still has the power inside her, as do all of the members of the clandestine. They all have power inside of them. The only one of them that ever used the bangle was Aisha. So.
Okay, can I just say then, interject before John comes in? Basically, that's just maybe, I got the touch, I got the power. No.
Okay. No, Chris.
Do you not remember Transformers, the movie?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You've got the touch. Okay. Moving swiftly on.
We more referenced it earlier on in the season that it's very similar to the Inhumans in the comic books. Power inside of them is activated by the Terrigen Mist, which brings it out in here. The show has replaced that with the bangle, which has activated
but only
Kamala's
for
power.
Kamala.
Yeah. And also Aisha, it's enhanced her power.
Yeah, it's enhanced it because in this, I mean, I was going to say the same thing. We have the whole thing about the power is within you. It's not through the bangle. It's just activated it because we see later on Cameron getting the powers. He has no bangle.
No bangle. Yep. Absolutely. And very similar to Shang-Chi, who had the 10 rings, but the power wasn't coming from the 10 rings. The power was him. So, yes. All connected in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Speaking of connected, let's move on to our marvelous moment number 2, because that action that Kamala has taken with the destiny fulfilled, effectively, she's transported back to current time, back to exactly the moment that she left, where everybody in the room is on the floor after the explosion that effectively would have come out of the bangle with the attack of Najma. But the consequence is that the rift has opened up now. So whether it was the connection of the bangle and Najma's weapon, which we still can't really work out what it is, the double-bladed kind of handled swordy thing. That's dagger. Yeah, dagger thing. Yes, not sword. Swords are much longer. But that seems to be where the veil, border has come from, by the adventures of Kamala. So, unfortunately, one of the clandestine, there's only 2 left of them at this stage. As we said last episode, we lost quite a few of them. Fariha is the second last of the clandestine, and she walks directly towards what she thinks is her way back home and dies instantly.
Yeah, just a bit.
Yeah.
And not in a kind of pass through the veil and crispy and then disintegrating.
Yeah.
Exactly. She turned to rock. I mean, that's it. I mean, I think with Najma, it's just, I wish we'd had more time with her, actually, because, she was welcoming Kamala and all this when they first met, but you can see that she was using her. She's effectively ostracized her own son, Cameron. She knifes Aisha for betraying them. Yep. So she's pretty bad, actually, in the end. And then there's the self-sacrifice. I just feel that moment there between Najma and Kamala, it kind of went too easy.
Okay.
In a sense.
Yep.
I know Cameron is her son, and so you would do anything for your son, but it's actually the way she's being portrayed is that she'll do anything to get back through the veil. In some respects,
and punish anybody that goes against her.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know Cameron's father, but we don't know who he is. But it's almost like poor Cameron is some baggage that she picked along the way because she was on Earth for so long and she didn't want to be. So almost you could imagine her being resentful towards him. So given his betrayal, she basically says, well, you're staying put, you're ostracized.
Okay.
And just because she, it connects with what she does to Aisha because she kills her.
Yeah.
So I kind of just wanted to, I just felt with this whole moment, I just felt a sense of, I wish there'd been a bit more Najma at various points.
And again, we may see more of that next episode.
And we might do. Yeah. But I thought it was really cool turning into that crystalline rock. I thought the CGI around the skull was possibly a little dodge, at least for the Najma one.
I thought Freya's went fast enough that it looked cool and really scary, and it was a real shock that it happened as well. It went really well, but I think them dwelling on Najma's CGI skeleton falling apart, I thought that didn't look great.
No.
Unfortunately.
No, it didn't. That was a shame because it was the angle as well. It zeroed in on it, and it was the focus.
Yeah.
The initial first one was blinking, you'll miss it. Oh my God.
Wow.
What just happened?
It almost looked unfinished.
I don't think unfinished. I think rushed. I think the whole thing was just that it was, and I think it was, and the difference here I'm kind of saying is that it was done to the level that they wanted, but they were just like, we don't have enough time to give this the polish that that some of the other kind of CGI has been given throughout this season. But for me, it was the pause moment on the rock salt that Derek and I, we had a similar thought here.
Yeah.
For a split second.
Oh yeah. And I think it's absolutely a reference to the Terrigen Mist and the Inhumans. We've mentioned them a couple of times before on this episode and previous episodes. This looks very similar to how the Inhumans were created in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. specifically. Yeah. This was the whole story of Skye in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and how she became Daisy Johnson, how she became Quake, getting her powers, going inside the rock and then bursting forth with her powers, after being trapped in rock. This looks very similar. Yep. So I'm almost certain they paused for that moment so that they could give a reference to, the Inhumans, because comic book version of Kamala is an Inhuman, and that's exactly how she got her powers. Terrigen Mist. Yeah. Turned her to rock, and then she came out with her powers. Yeah. So I like that. I like that there's at least a nod back to that. Again, they've done that quite well throughout the show, taking little bits of the comic book and twisting them slightly so that it can fit this new version of Kamala for the TV show. But that one was a lovely touch to do that. Really
I agree. I for a split second went, oh my god, this is what they're gonna do. Like, they're actually, I thought they were like, they touch anyone with Nor blood touches the veil, and this becomes like, basically they get amped up in power or something. Like, it unlocks, and like it was going to be a wave that shot out from the veil across the world. Yeah. And that was your basically Terrigen Mist moment around the world, creating everything. And I was like, oh my god, that's going to be, like, that's it. That's how you get mutants. That's how you get Inhumans. Like, you've just, wow. No, that doesn't, they just kill them. And the slight issue I had with this moment across both, which is, Najma, I'm with John on this. Najma, they had built her to be singularly focused in returning to her dimension. Mm-hmm. And she gives it up too quickly. She goes, you're right, I'm being a bad mother, family's important, alright, gonna scream and empower my son. Yeah. That was it. And I'm like, just split second, not even split second, it was just like one paragraph too short in my view. Because even if you had to have done, like, Kamala and Najma battling, like a couple of punches, talking to each other as that fight scene. Yeah. Like an extra 3-4 minutes as they go, think about this, you killed my grandmother, blah, 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 bang, bang, bang. And you're going, family's the most, Kamala's trying to show her or teach her why family's so important. Yeah. Which she does, but just with a few words and that's it. Well, sorry. And that's, again, assuming that's what Najma meant to do when she walks into the veil, dies, and kind of sprouts off the power. That was what her intended power was. It's not
her intention was to close the veil, and she makes the very specific decision to send the power to Cameron because she calls out his name. She's very specific about doing that. What I like about this, and I know I totally get your point that this is really fast, but what I do like about the conversation with Kamala is she's effectively talked to the bad guy who's made really stupid decisions and regrets them, because you can see the regret on Najma's face, and gone, well, if you've made a stupid decision, why don't you just go back? So she's effectively said that she cut off Cameron because he betrayed her. And Kamala goes, but why don't you just go back to him and say you're sorry? Because you can still do that. It's still a thing you can do. You don't just keep going down the dark and bad path. You can also make a decision to go back and go, ooh, I'm sorry, I was wrong. I kind of like that as the way to resolve the situation, but you are right. It plays out in a really quick amount of dialogue. And turns around really quick, considering she did something like killing, Aisha 50 years ago.
Yeah. I mean, agreed. I think the sentiment and how it played out really, really good. And it absolutely fits with everything about this series. But I feel like one of those people that will say it, and I'll just say it, but I'm like, how did she know that would work? I mean, that's the thing. I guess because even with last week and that explanation from the Red Daggers, which was great. And I guess they do have more understanding and so on of this being the ClanDestine from that realm. Yeah. Then I think that's why just more time with Najma, like understanding that realm a bit more. Cause I was just like, how did she know that was going to transfer? Yeah. Like, how did she know that would close it? So does that mean she knew that this could have happened, that they would walk towards it and just die, because it's like they didn't. So I was like, well, then how did she know that dying and just saying her son's name would send her power to Cameron? So
the power of
but
the door to him.
Still, I hate being that person, because I'm quite happy to sort of lie back and let the river take me, so to speak. But I think it's just a lot happened in this episode, and it was just trying to figure out where it came from. But I still really enjoyed the moment.
Well, let's focus on the things they probably want us to focus on about the scene, because one more really important thing happens here. Muneeba sees that Kamala has the power. She's been the one that Muneeba's heard about. Some great scenes there with her and the family trying to track down Kamala, wondering why she hasn't come home, and her learning, hang on a second, the spyware for parents? Why didn't somebody tell me that I could spy on my 16-year-old child wherever she's going, just by activating her Find My Phone function? Loved that with the cousins. It was really good. But Muneeba realizing, and that moment of pride within her, that her daughter is a hero, and it also explains her entire history. All of those stories that her grandmother told, that her mother told her, were true. She just thought she was playing at fantasy, but now she gets confirmation that her mother was never trying to tell her fantasies. These were all true stories that she could have believed.
It adds that layer for Muneeba as well. But I love how she says it as well. She goes, "Are you the light girl?"
Yeah.
So I just really, really like that. I even like the bit sort of after that where Sana is showing all the rebellious photos of Muneeba as well. Really loved that whole thing.
Absolutely. I love how affronted she is, even though Bruce Springsteen is also from New Jersey, how affronted she is that she would run away to follow Bruce Springsteen, not Bruce Springsteen. Of course it was going to be Bon Jovi, right?
Wow.
Love that.
Wow.
Love that.
I enjoyed this, and it's becoming a bit of a common thread on this episode for me, and I won't belabor a point. This bit happened too fast for me. An overprotective mother. She does show pride, but she just automatically accepts, oh my God, you're the light girl. Mm-hmm. And like, then it's just kind of like, yeah, everything's fine. Like, not just, I've witnessed two people die in front of me.
Yeah.
And my daughter has magical powers.
Yeah.
And all that time. Like, it's a split second too fast.
Yeah.
Where you think this is a mother who had a bit of a mental breakdown because her daughter went to an Avengers con and disregarded her. Like, if you had have gone her walking into the rooms going, Kamala, I'm going to kill you, blah, 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 like, or you're grounded for life. And then you have Kamala, like, punching someone out with, like, her powers or doing something super heroic. But even, and again, this also I'm going to jump in. There's a piece where Kamala runs off to speak to the Red Dagger up the top, above, kind of on the balcony aspect. And it's kind of alluded to, because you don't see it, Kamala kind of using her like light powers to build stepping stones or kind of platforms she can jump on up.
Yeah.
And her mum's eyes go wide.
Mm-hmm.
But you don't see it, and that's it. Like, she doesn't go, oh my God, like, my daughter's floating in the air. Or go like, what, careful. Oh, it was just.
So she'd seen Light Girl use her powers, remember?
Yeah?
Yes. So she knows, now that she knows that Kamala is Light Girl, she knows the powers. She's basically smiling and going, wow, that's really cool, effectively. And she's also connecting it back to all the stories that Sana told her from childhood about their family having Jinn powers. So I think they're all coming across. You're right that it's very fast, but I like that they revisit it later in the episode where Muneeba's telling Kamala, I'm sorry for holding you so tight and so close, but I'm worried about losing you and you going out into the world at the age that she is. I think that's a really important moment between the two of them. But there's so much that's being touched upon here. That moment where she's saying goodbye to the Red Dagger, to Kareem, just seems to be coming out of nowhere. Right, later, we're now going back to America. So I guess I'll see you again sometime. Not really too sure about that, because he seems to have a lot of warrants out from the American government for things that he's done in the past. He seems pretty young to have a lot of warrants out for him, doesn't he?
Yes.
You never know.
Maybe the Red Daggers have lots of warrants out for them, and now that he is the last of them. But There's one other big thing that's going on in the episode. Did you notice the costume of Miss Marvel is still being built upon as we go through the episodes? We now have I was going to call it a face kerchief. That's not the right word. But the face covering that the Red Dagger has been using, he passes that on to Kamala. We've heard that that's been going back generations. So again, another historical item that's being passed on to her from the Red Daggers, like her waistcoat, that we saw before. We also get, very cool touch here, we also get, the necklace of Kamala, which was her name in Urdu, has broken and is now forming a shape which is her initials in Urdu. It's just a K or a KA, and looks kind of like the lightning bolt that Miss Marvel based her costume around, but is different. It's not a lightning bolt. It is actually an Urdu letter, effectively. So I love that touch. This is something new, different from the comic books. She took that inspiration from the original Miss Marvel in the comic books, which doesn't exist in the MCU. So now this is connected to the Urdu for her name. So lovely touch there. But again, more and more building on her costume. So we will see a final build of the costume, I guess, next week, right?
I think that's it. I think her mum and her kind of granny are going to surprise her with a built costume that she adds then Bruno's mask to when they get back to Jersey.
They are going to mother and grandmother the hell out of what she's got.
Oh my God, do you know what we're going to get?
Be perfect.
We're going to get a sewing montage.
That would be awesome.
It's literally what we're going to get, a sewing montage.
Costumes made by Illuminantes.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh my God, that would be even better.
I think just finally on this point for me, like yourself, I love the sentiment from Oniba. She is one of my favourite characters from this series as well. I thought that was really great sentiment. And also that with Kareem, he says, you can always call me. So I'm glad they've not just phased out the Red Daggers here, that there is hope for them to be back in whatever stories that are going to come up here with Miss Marvel. Because I think it's a great pairing, and I think it really works.
It works really well. And did you notice the little nod there? Everybody thinking that the Red Daggers are just the two people, but he does say, I've got to go off and tell the rest of them about the death. So there are more. It was just it was just the two of them that we're dealing with Kamala. So nice little line there. So we may see other Red Daggers in future. Good stuff.
Because there probably are other deserters or kind of exiled people from the North Dimension, or maybe other dimension, because he does mention it's just one, and that is a big world that the map he shows. So their whole thing is monitoring for this. That's potentially kind of, they are some version of the kind of time police that we've seen across other kind of Loki and things like that,
or the Sorcerer Supreme who monitors people coming in from different realms, right?
Exactly. Well, he didn't pick those up.
No, he did not.
So lackadaisical.
Yeah, well, I suppose they did just lose a lot of people, so.
Yeah.
That's true.
So, should we move back? Should we get transported back to Jersey? Should we move back to Jersey as well for our final marvelous moment? Yes. And essentially it's with Cameron and Brian. Bruno.
Absolutely, yes. Strange things happening at the Circle Q.
Yes, exactly. This is the last 3-4 minutes of this kind of episode. We get Cameron, after being already powered up in the other alleyway, kind of ending up behind the circle and essentially kind of going, Brian! And Bruno, being a nice person, kind of brings him in, hides him.
Absolutely.
And you do get a couple of fun exchanges where, like, you have a poster of Nikola Tesla and he goes, oh, you're a car guy. Yeah. And he goes, like, aluminium, the magnesium, my favorite element.
Yeah. That's my favorite element too. Yes.
Yeah.
It's argon.
Argon.
It is argon.
Excuse me. Yes. Argon is even better. It is even better than magnesium and aluminium.
Yes. It was great, that awkward chit chat. Like, just the two lads being awkward. Yeah. Like, they did it so well.
Yeah. And absolutely. Both of them bonding over being orphans. Now orphans.
Yeah.
Yeah. But there's definitely, if there was one person, I think, in the entirety of New Jersey that Bruno did not want to see on his doorstep, it was going to be Cameron. It was just, this is the guy, the love rival, who's been calling him by the wrong name the whole time. Interesting that it wasn't on purpose. That was a total mistake by Cameron. Kind of poor guy, you know, I guess we can forgive him for that now. But I did like it. I think it makes sense that the two of them would connect together, of course. That's who he would seek out because, Bruno, of course, knows Kamala's secrets. So, and then we get the explosive finale, as I guess the damage control drone is what's come in and sent a massive explosion into the Circle Q, right? So
yeah, because it was going to basically fire a rocket into the room with them, and then Cameron fires a bolt of his hand energy, his illuminating kind of hand energy out at the drone that spins it, and it kind of ends up firing into the Circle Q.
Yeah.
Ah, I see. Okay, I did not connect all of that together.
No, yeah, because it's a blink and you miss it. But Cameron throws his hand out and it kind of basically shoots, much like his power from the comics.
Yeah.
It basically shoots that kind of bioluminescent kind of bolt out. Yeah. And then the drone starts to spin and it ends up shooting the rocket right through the front door. Yeah. Which then basically explodes, and we fade to the ending of the Miss Marvel base out of Karachi. I'm assuming the opening and the ending next episode will also be back in Jersey. Our hero is on their way back, hopefully, to save her friends. But that's the end of the episode.
Yeah.
And that's the end of the penultimate episode. So before we get into what we think, where we are, etc., is there any other final notes that you guys want to chat about?
No, nothing from me.
I think we covered everything there.
Yep. No, I've already just mentioned, I did mention the opening credits and stuff being Seppiathon. I love that. I love anytime they merge the opening Marvel Studio credits into something else. It's just always
that was
happy
cool.
for me.
Yeah.
Cool.
Nice touch, and I just continue to love it.
Yeah.
Okay, gentlemen, let's get into whether do we defend Miss Marvel episode 5 time and again. Derek, I'm going to jump to you first.
I defend this episode. It's a really good episode of television, a really good storyline they're telling. I'm just really surprised it's the penultimate episode of the season. Only because I want more, which is probably a good thing. Isn't that the key to entertainment, is leave them wanting more, right? So, I'm really excited to see the final episode of the show. I'm really excited to get all the cast back together, all our main characters, because I loved those first couple of episodes where we had, teenage Kamala in her local community and her group of friends. I really liked that. So hopefully we'll see more of that next episode. And at least we know we're getting the Marvels in the future. So we will see Kamala Khan back. But I do defend the episode. I think it was a good episode overall.
Excellent. Johners, do you defend this episode of Miss Marvel episode 5?
Yeah, I do defend this episode. I give it 4 periodic tables out of 5. But I just think that it just really whizzed past me, and there were a few things where I just started to question, and it pulled me out. And I still really enjoyed the story of Aisha. I love seeing Kamala do her thing at the railway station and with her nanny and with Hasan. I really enjoyed that, and I think it absolutely added so much. I loved the whole thing with Kamala's mother and grandmother right at the end as well. I just needed a few more connecting dots, and I think they could have done that just by adding 10 minutes on to quite a short episode. So I really enjoyed this, and everything that was in there was needed. I think some of it just, for me, needed more story padding around it, whether that came in an earlier episode or whether it was done in this episode. So I do defend this and would give it 4 periodic tables out of 5.
Excellent.
Chris, what about yourself? Do you defend this episode?
I do. Much like Aisha taking off running at the beginning of this episode, I just felt that set the pace. And for better or for worse, it gave us that pace for the whole episode. So it had to give us some slight narrative leaps for kind of ourselves to make. And overall, I really enjoyed it. I just feel this was kind of too slightly kind of short and too early to be the penultimate episode. I felt it like this could have happened later, or like Aisha and Najma could have died later, and we could have had more information and got more storyline, and it just all went by in a blink of multicolored sparkles and stars, where I just wanted a bit more. I think that's kind of the only downside I can have. We go into the final less than 60 minutes next week, and I think that will be a telling moment for a lot of us of like where it sits in the overall rankings, because personally, Ms. Marvel as a show is some of the best TV we've had in a year. Like, I'm rating it up there with some of from a historical and cultural perspective with some of the stuff I learned in Lovecraft Country. Mm-hmm. I never knew about the India-Pakistan kind of separation. I never knew how it happened, and I'm learning, and then I'm also learning about Muslim families and the wedding traditions and their actual mosque traditions. I'm learning about this stuff, and I find it same way I learned about quite a lot of stuff from the African American community in Lovecraft Country. Mm-hmm. So I find this interesting. I find it really intriguing to get down here, and I hope they stick the landing in the next episode, which I think, if even at the worst case, it's Miss Marvel doing a superhero landing, that's still good enough for me.
Yeah.
Fellow Defenders, we are at the end of our discussion, but there's always one place we have to go at the end of each discussion. Isn't that right? We need to go to the slushy bar.
Mm. Yes, we certainly do, for question 5 for this episode.
It's a warm day. Hopefully there's some ice slushies available in here.
Absolutely. It's roasting today.
John, do you want to give us our 5th question on our slushy bar quiz?
Yeah, absolutely. Question 5. What is the meaning of Aisha's name?
Oh, very good. Interesting. I can't recall that at the top of my head now.
No.
Very good, John. Very good. Do you want to give the question one more time?
Certainly do. What is the meaning of Aisha's name? Fellow Defenders, fellow quizzers, send your answers to feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com to be in with a chance for some Ms. Marvel goodies. Mm-hmm. Just one more question left as well.
Exactly, yes. Send in all 6 answers to our email address of feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. And once we do our wrap-up podcast, we'll be giving out those goodies for Miss Marvel.
Yes, and it's going to be a good episode as well. This episode of TV Podcast Industries is brought to you by our supporters on Patreon, including Alice Bola. Thank you so much, Alice, for your support.
Absolutely. Thank you, Alice, and thank you, everybody that supports us over on Patreon.
Yes, thank you so much, Alice. Really great to have your support. Thank you.
Yes, if you want to be like Alice, super cool, you can support us monthly for any amount over on patreon.com/tvpodcastindustries. Or if you'd like to support us with a one-off donation, you can pop on over to buymeacoffee.com/TVPI and you can buy us a coffee and keep our illustrious editor, Derek, producer extraordinaire, in caffeine as he toils away into the wee hours, getting this dulcet tones of an audio podcast out to your ear holes.
Well, we did allude to it earlier on. We are currently covering Miss Marvel, finishing up on The Boys this week, and we are kicking off our coverage of Umbrella Academy. So I have a couple of episodes to edit at the moment, so lots of late nights coming up.
Lots of coffee.
So thank you so much to all of you for your support through Patreon and through Buy Me a Coffee.
Exactly. And also remember, fellow defenders, you can support us by subscribing to the podcast and sharing it with your friends, family, and all the lovelies in between. Mm-hmm. Remember, sharing the podcast is, of course, sharing the love.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Yes, but you can also support us by giving us feedback. You know it's good because we want to hear your thoughts on Miss Marvel and all the shows we cover. So don't forget, you can send us your feedback at feedback@tvpodcastindustries.com. Join our Facebook group at facebook.com/groups/TVPI, or just head on over to tvpodcastindustries.com and you can leave us a voicemail. You can find us on Twitter, on Instagram. Leave us your thoughts and we will read them out on the air. First up, we actually have some feedback from Salim McKisler on last week's episode where he posted this up on Facebook. Salim had this to say: I thought that Jin's escape from the DODC was rather convenient. We're 15 years into a universe from Tony Stark announcing he's Iron Man, and the agency charged with addressing superpowered threats doesn't have a better super being suppressant system. Does anyone know if this is a nod to the comics? Was Damage Control famously inept in the comic books? Good question, Salim. So, Damage Control was more of a kind, as a comic book, was a cleanup
Yeah.
service. They were kind of came out of essentially having to clean up as an insurance company and a contractor the damage done by superheroes, supervillains, kind of there. What we're seeing in the MCU is them taking more of a agency like approach where I'm not going to use S.H.I.E.L.D. but they did have cape killers in the previous one of the previous episodes when the Jinn were kind of arrested. They had those guys in big, massive bodysuits with big, massive suppressive guns that looked like the cape killers from the Civil War and the kind of the Registration Act arc within Marvel Comics.
Yeah.
But they do look like in this, they are taking on a governmental enforcement, like S.H.I.E.L.D. approach where they're looking after making sure that the unregistered, unknown, enhanced people are kind of under control.
Yeah, I was going to say, Chris, you might not say S.H.I.E.L.D. but they're obviously regretting not having an agency like S.H.I.E.L.D. in the MCU anymore. So they're using Damage Control to cover that over, because absolutely the appearances of Damage Control would have been S.H.I.E.L.D. had S.H.I.E.L.D. still existed. If they hadn't taken out my favourite agency in the MCU. Unfortunately, I do think we would be giving them a lot of credit to say that the ineptness of this version of damage control to allow these superpowered beings to escape as easily is a nod to the comics, but they are inept in the comic books. It's a comedy book. The Damage Control is written as a comedy, and originally there was this TV series proposed, which was supposed to be half-hour episodes of a comedy series of a cleanup crew after the Avengers destroyed cities, and it was supposed to be Damage Control. So I don't think it's a nod to the comic books. I think it is just odd that they're this inept to allow these superpower beings to get out of their supermax prison. But I think we'd be giving them too much to say that it's a nod.
Yeah, I agree. But definitely, they're pretty woeful. Reinstate Hydra. I mean S.H.I.E.L.D.
Or Hammer. You could literally do Hammer. For a while they were called Hammer.
Oh.
I think we all really just want
Hammer time.
I think we all just really want Coulson back, right? As leader of S.H.I.E.L.D. with May. So bring back the actual S.H.I.E.L.D. that does exist still in the MCU. Come on, do it.
Yeah, or AIM.
I don't think you consider those a government force to take care of situations. Bring back S.H.I.E.L.D. S.H.I.E.L.D. exists. We want them back. Thanks so much, Salim. We also have an email in from John Daniel who says, I know so much happened, but I just want to talk about Kamala and her mother forever. The look of wonder when she asked if Kamala was the light girl gave me goosebumps that haven't worn off yet. The reveal went better than I could have hoped, and it warmed my heart so much. I love hearing my emails read on your show, but that's all I got this week. John from Chicago. Thanks, John. I'm with you. I really liked the scene. I know it was short. I wanted more of it, but I did really like the scene between Kamala and her mother. It's been building throughout all of the episodes, the relationship between these two characters, so central to the show, and just to have that moment of pride, I guess, of Maniba was really good.
Yeah, cheers, John. We also got an email in from Jerry in Niceville. Hey guys, this episode was a great lesson about the terrible history of India and Pakistan. How it is never talked about in schools or talked about as just a footnote in a story about Gandhi. But this episode was all over the place in tone. You had serious historical drama with sappy family story tropes dashed with some superhero stuff. This was my least favourite episode. This series started as a good meaty steak, but then they added maple syrup and black pepper on top. Jerry in Niceville. Thanks, Jerry, for that. Definitely everyone should always read their history. And hopefully in schools they allow the actual stuff to be told rather than just not cover it at all. But it is pretty grim, the story of the British in India.
It really is. And I know we're not as old as our parents are, but we're not too far away. So a lot of this history would have been hidden in our school, because, as they always used to say back then, history is written by the victor, so we wouldn't have got taught
exactly.
a lot of this stuff.
And dare I say it, the British in Africa, in particular Kenya and South Africa. British Islands. It's all pretty grim-o, I think, where the British Empire comes into play. It was effectively white supremacy sort of policy around the globe. So, definitely read the history. It's always good to learn from terrible mistakes as well.
But my Banshee story is definitely coming together, guys.
And to be honest, I think, this is also, I guess the weakest episode for me so far. Right. There's a lot that I like in it, and I think a lot that needed to be told for sure. But I would certainly think it's my weakest of the series so far. And just trying to now imagine as well steak with maple syrup and black pepper. I reckon there's a restaurant somewhere that does that.
I can see it.
Yes, thank you so much, Jerry. Great to hear from you as always on the shows again and again. Over on Facebook, we also got some feedback from Heather Wallace on this episode, who had this to say. Maybe that love quadrangle will resolve itself with the Bruno-Cameron pairing. The last 2 episodes have really brought home that I'm actually Muniba's generation. Last week, the conversation she had with her mum about cleaning the house was exactly the conversation I had with my mum for years. And this week, it was the Bon Jovi reference and 80s outfit. I'm not sure how I process that information. I mean, it's one thing to have the hilarious 80s flashbacks on The Boys when they feature Jensen Ackles, or the nostalgia of Stranger Things when I was the same age as the kids. But to be the parents' generation? I'll just have to hold on to what Muniba says. We had lots of adventures.
Exactly.
Yep. You know what? That would be definitely me and you, John.
Well, more you as well, because you're older.
I'm a whole year older than you, John. Well, 361 days older than you. That's right, isn't it? Yes.
Yes, it is. And I am so young. I am just a cherub in your eyes in comparison.
Well,
Chris
you're not
doesn't
Kamala.
remember the 80s.
That's true.
It's true. I'm not that young. I wish I was that young. But yes, we know what you mean, Heather. We know what you mean.
We certainly do. Thanks so much, Heather, for your thoughts. Really good to hear from you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Heather.
Dr. Bob Phillips says, so many things to love about this episode, from the way Baby Nani used her own Noor to make the stars, to the reveal of the genuine misnaming of Brian, or is it Bertie? Bruno by newly powered Cameron, and through the stitching of the veil by a mother's redemptive sacrifice, echoing that of Aisha earlier, and balancing evil mummy karma perhaps, though that's now mixing religious systems. It's very true. Yes, lots of different systems there, Dr. Bob. But yeah, I'm really glad you enjoyed this. There's definitely all of those touches in there, and I totally understand what the guys are saying, what Chris and John are saying, that, they are just touched upon and may have been allowed to linger in a different movie or show, or if they'd been allowed to linger, maybe they would have been better. Yeah,
I totally agree with Dr. Bob on everything he said. I think it's just, talking about the layering with this historical stuff and with the family stuff and how it's all layered in, and for the Khans, and I need that family layer for Najma, because, Dr. Bob totally right about that sort of redemptive sacrifice, and stitching it and echoing it to Aisha earlier. And so just that layer of Najma and her family, whether it's Cameron, the ClanDestine, and so on. I think just a little bit more for me, but totally there with the sentiment and that for sure.
I wonder, is it because they're doing so much different on the show, when they try to rely on standard tropes, they kind of fall over a little bit? Do you think it's that? Because this show is something completely different than we've covered, certainly, as a podcast, and all the superhero shows that we've covered. And when they try to lean into the mother sacrificing herself for her child, which is what this seems to be, that's a reasonably standard trope that we've probably talked about quite a lot. But that kind of falls over a bit because the whole situation that they're in is so different from anything we've seen before. Maybe it's something like that.
Maybe it is that, yeah.
No, I can completely agree with that. I think that's a definite valid theory there.
Wonder if it's that.
Yeah.
Thanks so much, Dr. Bob.
Yeah, thanks, Dr. Bob. We also got some feedback through from Twitter at TV Pod Industries. Matt Murdoch says, there's so much great culturally rich music in Miss Marvel from the supervisors Jordan and Murphy that it is sometimes easy to overlook Laura Cartman's amazing score in the show. This 5th episode was a clear and awesome exception that you couldn't overlook. The Miss Marvel theme really added to the very emotional parts of this story, like when the stars led Sani back to her father. Hats off, Laura Cartman. Never disappoints. If I had time to do a music review this week, I would, but alas, I just wanted to add a thought to you guys. Thanks so much, Matt. I know what you mean, actually, and something didn't mention, but the emotional parts of this and the music connected with that were actually really beautiful.
They really were. That whole sequence at the train where it merges the theme that we've heard from Aisha throughout the episode into the Miss Marvel theme as Kamala arrives. I think it's beautifully done. Watch it again. Yeah. Just that couple of minutes scene is really, really good. Thanks for calling that out, Matt.
Yes, thank you so much, Matt. Really appreciate the feedback as always.
Yep. We also got an email in from Coffee and Vodka who says, greetings, fellow cremated defenders. The backstory of Aisha and Hasan was a needed bridge taking us from origin to current day. Half of me didn't expect to get it. The other half wasn't expected to be in such rich detail when we did. What followed seemed almost tacked on in a rush to get the story moving forward as quickly as possible. How and why did the portal appear? It destroying the Jinn felt right in a firm no returns policy. But how was Najma able to affect the portal? How was the energy of it, and possibly her own essence, transferred to Cameron? The regret she showed for Aisha and Cameron before possibly sacrificing herself and closing the way back seemed unearned. Where was the conflict of a concerned mother to her daughter whom she just learned had been keeping such an important secret? Damage control was onto Cameron way too quickly. Just as swift was his, oh look, I've got powers now, reaction. And then a sudden explosion to blow out this penultimate episode candle. Guess what I'm saying is, the final 10 to 15 minutes should have been stretched over a couple of episodes. 4 gin mummies out of 5. Peace and take care, Coffee and Vodka. Thanks, Coffee and Vodka. Good to hear from you about your thoughts on the episode. I think we're on a similar place, I think, with the guys. It does seem quite rushed overall. I know, obviously, Damage Control would have been trying to find Cameron since they escaped from their Supermax prison. So I'd say they were on the trail of him. But yeah, it did seem really, really quick. Everything in that last couple of minutes could have easily stretched into another episode. But hopefully they'll nail the landing, as we said, in the final episode. Thanks for that.
Our final piece of feedback comes from the one and only Greg Schwam with a voicemail.
Hey, Derek and John, this is Greg calling about episode 5, Time and Again. I really dug this episode. The whole flashback scene and the whole story of Aisha, and I thought that it was really, really well done, and it was exciting, and the actress who plays Aisha was beautiful and really, really good. My only complaints about the episode are that I guess we're not really a complaint, but we have some definite, obviously, some Back to the Future, Harry Potter type stuff that, would that work if this, no, it's, you know what? Hey, just don't think about it. And, we're good. And then it seemed like some of the writing, with, Kamala and her mom and her grandmother was a little clunky, and just the whole reunion hug at the end. It was, I just thought it wasn't the best, but I really enjoyed the rest of the episode. I look forward to hearing you guys talk about it. Bye.
Excellent stuff. Thanks, Greg.
Yeah, thank you so much, Greg. But I can I say that? He didn't address it to me.
That's true. Yes. It's only because we have moved around hosts on this show more often in the last month than we have a couple of years, I think.
That is true.
So thanks, Greg. It's okay.
Yes, thank you so much, Greg. And I let you off this one time. Just this one. Everyone gets one.
Yeah, great stuff, Greg. I think that kind of echoes again a bit how we've also felt about the episode. So yeah, really great to get your thoughts, Greg. Thanks. Oh yeah, and Greg, I love the I love the strategy when we start getting Back to the Future or Harry Potter stuff. Sometimes it is best not to think about it. I like it.
Just wave it away, move along, just stick with the story. That's where we're going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Thanks again, Greg.
Thank you so much, everyone, for your feedback. We really appreciate it. As always, if you like what you hear, why not head on over to TV Podcast Industries, where you can subscribe to each and every episode that we put out. As we have alluded to, we have started recording our thoughts on Umbrella Academy. Yes, that will be one of the next shows we cover. But before that, we will be back next week with the finale for Miss Marvel. Yes, we will. But also this week, we will be releasing our finale thoughts on the finale of The Boys. Yes, the season of The Boys is coming to an end, and it's going to be good. Well,
Let's hope so.
we assume.
We hope
assume.
so.
Yes.
They're going to stick to the landing or blow it up in a one or the other.
It will be napalming the property.
Absolutely.
Yes, much like Giant Whales from season 2, it is going to be finished one way or another.
Yes, thanks so much for joining us. We'll be back again next week. I'm so tempted to do an Irish goodbye and just cut the podcast.
Oh, I could so do it. So we're just going to keep talking and fade to darkness.
Yes, and slowly edge towards the door.
Yeah.
And then just run.
Don't say goodbye and everybody wonders where you are. They wonder whether you've been kidnapped or whether you're paying for that last round of beer.
Always kidnapped. Always kidnapped.
Always kidnapped. Yes. Bye.
Yeah, thanks so much, fellow defenders. I'll give you a big, warm, sloppy goodbye from me. And remember, keep watching, keep listening, and keep defending. Bye.